Well, hey, welcome everybody. No intros, no outros on this video. This is straight to business here. Very, very important things breaking right now. I received an email from Sumya, my blood brother, my soul brother, and probably my Indian News Bureau chief. And I got an email and it popped up, and I said, "What is this?" And the email from Sumya said, "Let me just go ahead and pull it up here, sir. Yesterday night, cross-border firing happened between India, China, and the Galwan Valley in Ladakh. There are 2 soldiers and 1 colonel dead on the Indian side, 5 soldiers and 11 injured on the Chinese side." And he said, "Thanks." And so I pulled a couple of videos here to get up to react to. The first one is from Wyon. And in this video is entitled, "India crossed LAC twice on Monday and provoked the attack." It says Chinese personnel. I don't believe that at all. That's not India's nature at all to do this. I don't believe that at all. So let's go ahead and take a look at it.
So let's start with the big story that we're tracking on Wyon at this hour. In the latest that has come in at the India-China border standoff, there are reports which have been confirmed by the Indian Army that a violent face-off took place along the line of actual control yesterday night, and it is also being said that 3 Indian Army men, including 1 officer, has lost his life in the ensuing face-off at the Galwan Valley in Ladakh. Now, according to the Indian Army, China has also suffered casualties during the escalation. Sources have confirmed to Wyon that no firing has taken place at the LAC, so the nature of the face-off remains ambiguous for the time being. But at this point of time, we can rule out the possibility of any exchange of gunfire. The violent face-off reportedly took place while both sides were disengaging after a massive build-up over the last few weeks. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held a meeting with Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat, the 3 service chiefs, and also Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar to take stock of the situation. And to give us more perspective in terms of what actually has happened and how all of this will, of course, play up in establishing peace at the border, we are joined in by Strategic Affairs Analyst Brahma Chalani, who is joining us live on this broadcast. Mr. Chalani, let me begin by asking you this. This is an incident that is in many ways unprecedented. There was this standoff that was taking place with China, but something like this has not happened since 1975. What do you make of this incident, and what do you think has resulted in the loss of lives in a standoff between India and China?
The reason is that Chinese forces have encroached on Indian territory and occupied vantage locations in Ladakh, including the Galwan Valley Heights. They've also occupied some area in Hot Springs, and they've occupied a long stretch of Lake Pangong. So they have invaded and then engaged in armed confrontation with Indian forces. Let's not use any euphemistic terms. What happened last night was an armed confrontation in which Chinese forces used a variety of improvised weapons other than firearms.
Right.
And the fact that an Indian commanding officer, he was commanding an infantry battalion, and 2 of his soldiers were killed, marks a further escalation of China's aggression. Let's not beat around the bush. What India is facing is aggression. This whole thing began with Chinese forces invading and occupying vantage locations in Ladakh.
Right.
This happened in April, May. It caught India off guard, and for the last month and a half, India is seeking to persuade the Chinese to withdraw.
Right. But the timing of this incident where 3 of the Indian Army personnel have lost their lives has taken place when there were military and diplomatic talks that were ongoing. And also the Indian Army's statement is very interesting here. The incident has happened at the time when the 2 forces were disengaging. how could this incident happen, resulting in the loss of lives of 3 people on the Indian side, which has been confirmed by the Indians? The Chinese, for their part, have not confirmed nor denied any casualties on their front. How can it happen when the two forces are disengaging from each other?
They were disengaging in terms of ending the eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation, and the mutual pullback of forces was being negotiated to avert military clashes. There have been military clashes since the Chinese invaded and occupied certain strategic locations in Ladakh. There was an armed confrontation in Nakula in Sikkim. There was also one armed confrontation at Lake Pangong. So to avert more confrontations, the two sides have been negotiating mutual pullback of forces. That's what is meant by disengagement. The Chinese have not withdrawn from the vantage locations that they occupied by stealth. They still remain entrenched. In fact, they're using negotiations with India to consolidate their hold on these occupied areas.
Right.
There is no way India can put up with this kind of aggression. There is no way that any Indian government can accept the loss of important strategic heights in Galwan Valley or in Hot Springs or in Lake Pangong.
That is true. Do continue to stay on with us, Mr. Brahmachalani. Let's listen in to what the Chinese spokesperson had to say about this incident. We'll listen to that short bite, and I'll come back to you for more reactions on that.
近来为缓和
Recently, in order to ease the situation in the border areas between China and India maintained close communication through diplomatic and military channels. On June 6, the border troops of two countries held a commander-level military meeting and reached an important consensus on easing the situation in the border areas. But what is shocking is that on June 15th, the Indian troops seriously violated the consensus of the two sides. They crossed the border illegally twice and carried out provocative attacks on Chinese personnel, resulting in serious physical conflicts between the two border forces.
严重肢体冲突。中方已就此向印方提出强烈。
China has lodged strong protests and solemn complaints with the Indian side, and once again solemnly demands that the Indian side strictly restrain the frontline troops in accordance with the relevant spirit. Do not cross the border, do not act provocatively, do not take any unilateral actions that will complicate the border situation. China and India agree to continue to resolve bilateral issues through dialogue and consultation and make efforts to ease the tension and maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas.
为缓和边境地区局势。
All right, so that was Zhao Lijian, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China. They're stating that, China wants to disengage. But looking at what has been happening, at the border between India and China, and while these negotiations are taking place, Mr. Chalani, how much can we trust the Chinese, and how do you see the resolution of this standoff at the India-China border going from here?
Let me first react to the Chinese statement because, we should not let the Chinese statement stand. The Chinese statement is a statement of propaganda. It's part of their disinformation. The Chinese standard playbook is to use deception and surprise to commit aggression and then blame the other side for being the aggressor. So it was not a surprise that when China invaded and occupied certain vantage locations in Ladakh, they branded India as the aggressor. Again, we are seeing the same playbook being employed.
Right.
Galwan Valley, where this armed confrontation happened, is on the Indian side of the LAC. There was no dispute earlier that Galwan Valley is on the Indian side of the LAC. The fact that an armed confrontation happened on Indian territory
Absolutely.
reveals a lot about the disinformation and propaganda that China is unleashing. They are the occupying force. They engaged in an armed confrontation with Indian forces on Indian territory that they have occupied. And then they accuse Indian forces of actually crossing into Chinese territory twice. This reveals China's aggressive designs. And we have to be cognizant of China's standard playbook. They will use the media, they will plant false stories, they will dish out disinformation, and they will try to paint India as the culprit. It happened even in 1962, right? They accused India.
I think that's an important point that you've made. That is an important point, because at this point of time, what the Chinese are not willing to acknowledge is that they have planted themselves in what effectively is Indian territory, and the status quo that existed in the month of April is what must be looked at as a resolution of this particular standoff. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Brahmachalani, for joining us on this broadcast in Vion.
Well, there are two things here that he said, that the guest said, not the journalist, the guest said, that caught my attention. He said that the Chinese attacked with non-conventional firing weapons. What does that mean? Did they shoot a bow and arrow? Did someone throw a knife? Was it rock throwing? I mean, that needs to be looked in. And then he said something else too, that this happened on Indian soil. So my understanding of the situation right now is, diplomatically at the highest levels, India and China are discussing this and trying to detangle the military from each other. Tensions are running high, no doubt. But we have fallen Indian soldiers. We have a colonel and 2 soldiers that are dead out of this, by no fault of their own. They didn't. This isn't India doing a black ops somewhere, crossing the border into another country, and they got caught. All they were doing was defending the rightful border. And something needs to be done about China. I know that there has been work between Australia and India kind of coming together and trying to hold China accountable. America has kind of rattled its saber at it. Germany has. They sent them a bill of, I forgot, 142 billion pounds or whatever euros for the COVID, what do you want to call it? The COVID bill. But something needs to be done about it. I don't think China is that strong of a military. I think India could walk right through her. But it's clearly the aggression. They are clearly the Chinese aggression. And something needs to be done about it. This is too much. This is too far. There needs to be consequences for their actions. And I don't think necessarily it is just a India problem. It's not just the Indian army problem. It's the world's problem. China is like a unruly, petulant little child that's been allowed to scream and throw tantrums and get whatever they want because mom and dad won't spank them. Now they're a teenager. Breaking into cars, knocking over mailboxes. We got to do something about it. We really got to do something about it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll keep you guys posted. I got something going on today with the new job. I got to go sign some paperwork. But I think the Warrior Queen and I will be doing some videos either today or tomorrow, depending on what's going on. It's going to be a busy day. Thank you again for watching. I love you guys. And please like and subscribe. We'll catch you later.